All right, now is that time to welcome in our great friend of the program. You know him, you love him, Geoff Butch Hobson from Bengals.com. Butchie, welcome back to Cincinnati.
Thank you very much. I want to thank my great IT person, my wife Anita, who got this off the ground. So
Look, you know what? This is what you got to do. It's
yeah,
early in the
yeah,
morning. You work your way through the problems, but you got to have a little help.
yeah,
Got to have a little
yeah,
help. Call in
yeah.
the IT.
Also, this is the first time we've talked. We've had we picked up another draft pick. Kerry Hobson and Danny Miller drafted Theo,
Yes.
a seven pounder out of Indianapolis State.
Oh
So
man, that's
yeah,
look, the Bengals need all the help they can get at
they
this point.
do,
So I,
they
I
do.
think plug
So
it in. They're looking for young defensive players. So let's
yeah,
let's let's get bending the edge needs to be the next step once they get past like out of the hospital and get home and get
yeah.
everything going.
Yeah. Well, you got to make sure he's got a Bengals jersey, not a Colts jersey. First things first. So.
That's true. That's true. Got to get drafted to the right team. I love that. Well, congratulations to
Thank you.
you and to Carrie, and it's awesome. Great to hear that. You have been traveling the South, uh, made your way down to the Senior Bowl, then obviously spent the week at the Super Bowl. I highly recommend to anybody. I was telling you off air before we came on. I get jealousy. It used to be a thing when I was at the Inquirer. These were you made all of these trips. You went to the Super Bowl for the week, whatever. Athletic now we have so many people. It's we're well staffed down there. But I get jealousy watching you go and crank out all that great content from down there. So kudos to you. That's a hard room to work. One of the hardest rooms to work. The
Yeah,
waiting forever for people to come off of their interviews on Radio
yeah.
Row and finding guys wherever you could find them. Always stuff. You did great stuff. I highly recommend everybody go to Bengals.com. Check out the loads of great content that Butchie produced from down there in the Super Bowl and everywhere else. Lots of good stuff for Bengals fans.
Well, we missed you down there.
Yeah.
We have the annual Super Bowl media pre hookup. That didn't
Yeah.
happen again, so we'll have to somehow we'll have to replace that in some way.
The two of us nearly died in a cab in San Francisco
Yeah,
one year, and
yeah,
and I always try to hit you up as a
yeah,
celebrate the anniversary of us actually
yeah,
being alive 9 years
yeah.
later now.
I don't know. I don't know. Probably nobody remembers the old TV show, The Streets of San Francisco. But I was Carl Malden, and you were Michael Douglas. As we went flying over that hill.
Never felt closer to death. Never felt closer to death in my life. But we survived and we had a great night and we still are having great nights as we go. I want to talk. I want to start. I'm going to go chronologically with you, which is going to take us back a little bit. I want to start and talk about the Senior Bowl. Specifically, obviously, the main headliner down there was Duke Tobin speaking about a number of different topics. I mean, is there a more fascinating team in the league right now than the Bengals? They seem to be on everyone's lips. Everyone wants to talk about Chase and Higgins and Hendrickson and everything else with them. And did anything before I get into some of the specific things that I saw that he said to you specifically? Did anything stand out to you that maybe was a little surprising that you heard from Duke down in Mobile?
Just that I thought, he took a lot of the blame on some of the stuff, which was stand up guy there. And I also the thing that struck me was how much I think they're focused on the defense because I really do think there's a sense, hey, if we get you know, as I was talking to a guy the other day, one of the new coaches, I said, hey, you don't have to invent the zone blitz. You just got to get to 15. And I think that, get the 15th in the league. And I
Yep.
think that's, and I think that's the sense is, of course, they want to, if they can be tops or top 10 or whatever. Yes. But I think the sense is, you know, from upstairs is of the sense I got from Duke is let's get this thing straight because we know what we got on offense. So, just a lot of I think there's going to be a lot of time spent, not only in player acquisition, but I think just as important this year is what they're doing right now, which is drawing up this philosophy.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I wanted to start with that stood out to me was so much was the blame and
Yeah,
saying, look, I hung on to Super Bowl defense a little too
Right.
long. I thought, and kind of putting that on himself and what he had to say, like, look, I put this on myself as much as any of the coaches. It's unfortunate they had to leave. This isn't about them, and really saying this is kind of about, some of the mistakes that they made in personnel and the bets that they made on guys gelling together that didn't. But I think it was also about, look, let's get younger then. Okay,
Yeah.
let's make that. I'm not going to make that mistake twice. Seemed to be kind of the
Yeah.
message there. And when you get into player acquisition, player cut season, that seems to be the clear message coming is that
Yeah.
nobody is guaranteed anything on that defensive side of the ball, and that's specifically a lot of the guys that were part of those great defenses in 21 and
Yeah.
22.
And I think there's a sense that let's play these guys that we have. I think there's a
Yep.
sense that let's see Miles Murphy. We saw how great the Eagles defensive end played, who was picked 2 picks behind Murphy,
Nolan Smith, yeah.
Nolan Smith, but he also had probably more than twice as many snaps as Murphy did. And of course, he doesn't have the 2 monsters next to him that Smith had. But I think they feel like Murphy is. Let's see Murphy. We really haven't seen Murphy, and I think the same thing with Battle too. Let's keep. Let's stop pulling him in and out of the lineup. Let's play him. So I think that's the sense I got was, we feel like, yes, we have to get younger and better, but I think they also feel like they've got some people in the cupboard that haven't been taken out yet.
I kept using the word disjointed in the implementation of these young players in recent years. It's like
Yeah.
it's felt like it's part of a rotation. And hey, you're right. These guys got to earn it. Like, the line of, look, do better on the snaps when you're on the field. That's fair.
Yeah.
But guys play better in a rhythm,
Yeah.
especially when you talk about it safety, where those guys typically aren't supposed to come off the field. They're supposed to
Right.
be the communicators that are out there all the time. And when you're out there and then you weren't out there the last play, did something change? Did we make an adjustment? It just feels
Yeah.
like a lot of that is part of it with all of the, and put that in there with the corners too, who have been in and out and rotated
Yeah.
and I think that ends up being tough, has been tough on a lot of the stunting the growth on a lot of these young guys. And the defensive line certainly can be part of that. I went through and just looked at over the last 5 or 6 years, first and second round edge defenders and how many pass rush snaps they got in their first 2 years. Murphy, you'll find him way down there towards the
Yeah.
bottom of the list. And his percentages, in terms of you get into pressure percentages and win percentages and stuff like that, aren't that skewed. They're right in the middle.
Right.
Obviously his finish
Yeah.
isn't great, and Duke mentioned that specifically with you. The no
Right.
sacks thing is hard to run from. But
Right.
you he has not played as much, got as much opportunity, and that's what I'm glad you mentioned Nolan Smith. That goes
Yeah.
across that Eagles line. They
Right.
had a bunch of guys that weren't as productive in their first or second
Right.
year, or specifically in their first year, but they kept at it, and eventually kind of they grew into what you saw in the Super Bowl, which was this dominating performance.
I mean, any edge guy who can have a pass defense in the end zone, I want to see more of them. And
Yeah.
granted, which Murphy did. I can't remember which game that was, but that
Yeah,
was
was that Tennessee, I think?
it might.
Yeah.
I think it was up here. It was at Paycor, I think. But
Yeah, I remember
any,
what you're talking about. Yeah, he ended up in
but
coverage.
but yeah, and it's I think the thing with too, and I think that's kind of what they're. If you look at the production of Jenkins and Jackson in their rookie year, pretty similar. Very similar to, but they didn't play as much as the guys who were drafted ahead of them. They or the guys around them. Both had some injuries they had to fight through, but their rookie production was pretty. Was right there with the other guys in the league. So they got to keep playing. I
Yeah.
think for their development. Now, they'll obviously, I mean, this draft is teeming with talented interior linemen. So to me, that's probably got to be first thing on the docket. But they can't stunt the growth of these guys because maybe this is this probably goes against what Brugler does, and you guys do a great job at the Athletic with the numbers and everything. But just my sense is, like with Murphy and Smith, okay, if you pick a guy and in that round, you're probably everybody pretty much in the league had the guy there, pretty close, within 10, 15 picks.
Mhm.
So you're talking about basically the same guy, right? So how do you use it? How do you use it? To me, it's not so much, oh, they picked that guy. It's how are they using him? You know what I
Yes.
mean? So because it's Murphy can't be that much worse than Smith, is he? Or
Maybe. I mean, it is
you
it is
know,
a flip of the, but so much of it's situation,
yeah,
and that we hear it probably more in the draft conversation with quarterbacks because they get all the attention and focus.
yeah,
Where the Sam Darnolds of the world, you end up in New York, and all of a sudden you can't play, even though everybody
yeah,
thought you had the tools coming out, and turns out you get him in the right situation and he looks great. And I think the same can be true for any player.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't, I don't think that it was the most conducive environment for those guys to develop in
yeah,
the last couple of years, or at least it didn't happen. And they're going to have to take a
yeah,
shot and hope. They better hope
yeah,
at this point
yeah.
that was what it was, because they're banking so much
Right.
on them
Well,
actually doing it.
I mean, they cleaned out. They cleaned out. They cleaned out the coordinator. They cleaned out two of the position coaches.
Mhm.
So, that's that if that's not it, you
We'll
know,
find out
then
quick.
yeah, right.
We'll
That's right.
find out.
Yeah,
We'll find out quick.
that's right.
And that's why that's why I've kind of said, like, look, just go. That's the point of Al Golden. And this was another point of what Duke said with you down there is the reason he was the perfect fit was his history of development, his
Yeah,
history in the college game, his history here with Logan
right.
Wilson
Yeah,
and Pratt and Akeem Davis Gaither
right.
and all of those guys. Like, they just seen it over and over again. He's done such a great job in helping young guys play at their highest level and their highest potential, and done it in Notre Dame. So the hope is, okay, here's a bunch of top 100 picks, and we're about to give you probably 2 or 3 more.
Yeah,
Take them and mold this thing right, and get these guys playing to their level that their athleticism gives you. I don't want to spend our whole time on we could
yeah.
do days on this.
No
They
question.
need to do
And we
we need to
will.
do days
And
on
we
it.
will. And we
Yeah,
will.
we will. We've got
But
much
that's
off
it.
season left to go.
It's kind of the
But
Jimmy Johnson, with Al Golden. It's kind of the Jimmy Johnson thing, really, on a junior on a smaller level. Here's a guy who knows the college game probably as well as anyone. He's been in it for 3 years, been highly successful. What better guy to evaluate those 100
yeah.
players?
Yeah. No, and you know what? Everybody's it's hard to find somebody that doesn't put Xavier Watts to the Bengals in round 2. It's like,
Right.
a guy who was a star for him at Notre Dame and knows well. I'm sure we'll see plenty of Notre Dame film in our future coming up as well. We can talk a little bit more about the headliner with Duke down there. What did you make on his tone? We read all the comments from you, from Kelsey Conway, the Inquirer, talking with Duke
Right.
down there. His tone regarding Hendrickson and T and Jamar and all of that stuff that now surrounds them in terms of contracts.
Sounds like a guy ready to make a deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Sounds like he wants to get in a room.
Yeah.
So I think his, my sense from talking to Duke was they can get something done. Now, probably going to, obviously what's left unsaid is, there's going to be some hard negotiating. So I think that was maybe a signal said, hey, we can do it. Let's get to the table.
Yeah.
I think they want to. I think they want to keep all these guys. I think they want to find a way to keep all these guys. And I think even I think even Burrow mentioned it down on somewhere during the Super Bowl that he thinks they can get it done, and pieces have to be moved around. So it's not. Nobody said it was going to be easy, but
Yeah.
it's definitely got to be a two-way street.
Yeah. Quote, has to be real engagement, and we want to get something done that everyone's accepting of it. That's kind of what stood out to me, in him talking to you was and the engagement word that showed up also with Kelsey. Like, that seems to be the point of, let's talk. Like, it felt like both sides were talking through the media a little bit over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if that was Duke's intention, but it sounded like, I want to talk to them. Let me talk to you. And I felt like the other side was saying, we want to talk to them. And so both sides just need to just figure it out and talk to each other. And they could do Zoom just like us, Butchie.
Right. There's
They
no
can just
question.
fire
And
this up. Look,
they,
if we can get you hooked up on here and set straight, I'm positive that they could get it together and turn their Zooms on and talk.
They may need Anita to get the connection going, but she's
IT,
willing. She's willing
IT,
to
get in
also.
here.
She's also willing to help the club.
Yeah, absolutely. We need that. Okay, I want to let's talk a little bit more about the Super Bowl. Can you give me insight? You know, I've seen this many times before, and you and I have stood next to a media pen
Right.
for 5 hours and had to shoot the breeze waiting for AJ Green or
Yeah.
whoever was down there running through Radio Row.
Yeah.
Give me a sense of the scene trying to follow Burrow on his junket the other day.
You know, kind of like maybe like a Kennedy in the '60s. I don't know. It was for those who remember might not remember that, but
You
it was
struck the chord with at least 4% of my audience for sure.
correct. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm trying to think of a latter day equivalent. I think it was. It's just that he had you know how these things are. There are handlers and there are handlers. There are handlers for the handlers, and
Yeah.
plus I think as we talked about before we came on, I mean he had you know 2 Louisiana State troopers, which I think is probably befitting a guy who won a national championship and a Heisman
Yeah.
Trophy down there, which I think is that was the right tone. But just all the other guys, but just following him around and all the people who were seeing him and kind of said hello to him, from Ed Reed to Drew Brees was trying to find him. Orlando Brown was trying to find him, couldn't find him because he was here and gone. He was boom,
Mhm.
boom, boom, he was out. And I mean, you never see the president in one spot, right? So boom, and he was gone. So it was kind of it was really, I mean, I've always been amazed, and I think Joe was also amazed too at his celebrity.
Yeah.
I think at high, I think he is he's the Athens high school point guard, and I think at heart that's what he is. I mean, but he's obviously has blown up, and I think at times it has chagrined him and shocked him. But that was again on display. Just another reminder: this guy's one of the this guy's a celebrity, and
Yeah.
about of which not many guys in the league have that kind of celebrity. Now you got a guy like Hendrickson, who's a great player, but he is because he plays defense and he doesn't really and he doesn't uh, he doesn't cultivate it. And I'm not saying Joe cultivates it, but you know he's there and he's on a lot of shows, but there's not 50 people around him. You know what I mean? And it's just
Power of the quarterback.
I guess
Power of
that's
the
just
quarterback.
it's a difference between celebrity and all pro, I guess, right?
Yeah, well, yeah,
Because
no doubt.
you know,
And Joe's leaned into the good parts of celebrity,
yeah,
and of
right,
fame. I mean, and I think tried to embrace those. It's been kind of interesting to watch him grow up in that way.
yeah,
Since he's
yeah,
come here, the guy who is like, look, not until I win something do I want to start really getting into that world and very
right,
focused in the work and ball
yeah,
to now over the last year or two has really kind of embraced this.
yeah,
I want to do the fun stuff. I want to live it up and take advantage of the
yeah,
good parts of the status that he's gained and earned and all of that and tried to dabble. You're right though. I do think he always at his heart will be the Athens high school point guard, but
yeah,
it's kind of interesting to see
yeah,
somebody learn about that world
yeah,
and start dabbling into that world for the first time and try to do it their way. Try to do it in the
right.
unique Joe Burrow way, which is usually unlike anybody else that you see.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about that too, Paul, this is you don't get much access to him, but when he's up there, he very honest. I mean,
Mhm.
we've seen him in his news conferences, kind of lament the loss of his privacy. We've seen him been very open about it. And it's for a private guy, he does open up in those news conferences, which is so I think we've seen, and I think this year was a key year in that, I think, in that he was trying to marry this stuff. Meanwhile, he was having the greatest year since, Sammy Baugh. And yet, but internally, he was having this deal, I think,
Yeah.
that's the way it seemed to me. And it was I think it's to me it's was kind of he might not be accessible, but yet he's pretty open in an odd way, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and growing into the idea of his words can have so much influence, and that's influence in the locker room,
Yeah,
that's influence towards the, towards the front office, towards his teammates that he once signed, towards influencing, saying, look, let's find, to everybody in the building, let's find the cornerstones, that he said after that loss to Pittsburgh. Like that press conference stood out to me all
yeah,
year. But that, between that and the moment after the Vegas win, before going to Baltimore, knowing what turned out to be the definitive 3-game stretch of the season, understanding that everybody needed to understand this is the definitive 3-game stretch of the season at that point, and telling everybody to get ready, get your mind right, and picking those moments. He talked about picking those moments. I thought you saw him lean into that, and he's understanding the moment now, certainly. And
yeah,
it's 'cause he's not really holding back his thoughts on things, and that's part of it. That's part of being the quarterback. That's part
right,
of being taking ownership over the fact that this is where I want my Super Bowl to be. This is how I want to win. I want to win it here, and I know, and I want to try to win it with guys that I trust and believe
yeah,
in. And let's be open and honest about it. I think the power of his words is kind of an underlying story of this year a little bit. Do you know who I felt I wasn't hearing a ton from, and did seem to be playing everything much more low key, was Jamar Chase, which I found interesting.
yeah,
I don't know how out there he was. I mean, he was at NFL honors, but he didn't really do or say anything.
yeah.
He just
I
did
tried to find him.
his one little thing. I guess he had
I
like an
tried to dig him
or
up,
something,
but
but
yeah,
he seemed like he was trying to stay out of the spotlight. We haven't really heard much from Jamar since the
yeah,
season ended, and where we've heard from Trey and we've heard from Joe, and Jamar was at the Pro Bowl and obviously speaking when spoken to there,
yeah.
but it seems like he's been trying to stay out of the limelight a little bit for somebody who has just as much reason to put himself into it as anybody.
Yeah, I think, and that was planned because I talked to him the week before New Orleans, and I said, that was the story. I wanted to go down and do the Ben Jarvis Green Ellis thing that I did with him. Was
Hmm.
when I did with Green Ellis, drove around the ninth ward that had been taken out by Katrina. Now, obviously, this was a different era in New Orleans, but I did want to spend some time with Jamar down there. That was the perfect story, right? 2 weeks after the greatest season maybe a wide receiver ever had, or one of them, spent some time with him in his hometown. But he said he didn't want to do media. I can respect
Hmm.
that. And I think that was, and he could have jumped on a bandwagon, and it would have been another, chance to, wave the flag. But I think, I think we got grown, we got some grown people on both sides of the room, and I think the Bengals are trying to get this done. I think
Yeah.
it's not like, you know, it's not like they haven't not wanted to pay these guys. They made Burrow the richest player ever.
Hmm.
Uh, they've talked to Higgins's guys. They let Jamar do his thing, and they, they were pretty close to a deal. I think they got close. I think,
Yeah.
and so I think, I know it's a two-way street. You know what I mean? So I think, that's why I say, I think you get three pretty mature guys, and three very mature guys in Burrow, Chase, and Hendrickson, and T. You can throw T in there. I mean, I think everybody's just a grown, and I think Duke is, like Duke said, we're trying to get it done. So I think people are trying not to make it blow up.
Yeah.
It could blow up, but I don't think, I think everybody's kind of smart, reasonable on both sides of the table. So that's what I got from, Jamar, just kind of, you know, you didn't
I
hear
like
anything from
have
Jamar.
no problem with, I feel like what you hear, certainly what we know from the Bengals, what we saw how they tried to do last year, which was really against
Yeah,
what they probably were planning in
yeah,
terms of paying Jamar before that year. I think they planned to do it before in this time frame coming up. I mean,
yeah,
Mike made that clear at Mock Turtle, and I
yeah,
think that's been who they've been as an organization. And with all of these major deals, typically a non-quarterback division, but so I don't have any doubts. Like the Jamar thing's going to get done. He's going to be the highest paid
yeah, yeah,
non-quarterback. There doesn't seem to be much doubt about that. Like I don't ever hear
yeah,
any ounce of pushback. It's like they're going to give Jamar whatever it is. Like they understand that Burrow and Chase are the absolute key. It's a matter of finding the way to keep all the pieces around them. I don't want to let you go without touching into the Hall of Fame conversation. You have been a voter and presenter for Willie and so much a champion for all of these guys in the political world of Hall of Fame votes, shall we call it, where it's just a very hard process, and it got somehow exponentially harder this year with adding the 80% threshold thing and now making it harder also for seniors to get in. So by virtue of all that, we're seeing the smallest class possible with one senior / contributor / coach and 3 modern day entries, and Willie missing out as a finalist, one of I guess 4 finalists that were amongst the last 7 that didn't get in. So you had 3 get in and 4 didn't. What was your view of that vote? And that I know some of it's, you can't speak openly about, but what was your view of that vote? He's automatically a finalist next year. Does this new setup reduce some of the hope and optimism level? It certainly makes it harder, right?
Yeah, it's really it's a weird deal because never before I think has he had this much momentum. To get into the top 7 in a field with Eli Manning, to me is pretty impressive. And to finish ahead of any of those guys could be in. And I think also too, back in the old days, you get into the top 5, that pretty much meant election, So he was in the top 7, and I don't know what the entire feeling of the voters were. I know there's a sense, and we do have confidentiality rules. We can't talk about things, but there's always been a debate in and outside the committee about first-time eligibles, and there were 2 in the final 7. There was Vinatieri and there was Kuechly, who were, good, solid candidates, but you kind of got the sense one was a first-time linebacker, the other one was a kicker, that maybe that would, give a guy like Willie, who's been on the cusp, that might give him a boost, that he might actually get past those, 2 guys. But maybe he did. We, don't know. But those, Kuechly and Vinatieri are going to get in at some point. So, and I think Willie is too, but it's just going to be harder. I mean, for example, if they're going to, and here's the thing, Paul, that I mentioned to you, it used to be if you get to the final 5, they would vote on each person separately, and he had to get 80%. Now it is you get to the final 7, and you vote for them as you take your top 5. And if you get 80%, you're in. But they have to have a minimum of 3. So if you don't get 80%, so you might get in without getting 80%.
Without getting 80, yeah.
Yeah. But we don't know what that number would be. So, and what happened, I think what happened, and I don't know what happened, but it happened, what I think happened is what I feared is you had what I call the Iowa caucus syndrome. You get very fragmented vote, and I think, which is what is going to happen with these gentlemen who are, you can't, it's like Jared Allen said after he got in, one of the guys that Willie, did not allow a sack to during his career. That's the 4th guy that Willie has played that he stopped from getting a sack who got into the Hall while Willie's been eligible since 2017, by the way. So so even Allen said, geez, these guys, look at all these great players, and it's and Tony Dungy, I believe, was quoted as saying that, Tony was upset with the small field that said, we're talking about, we're splitting hairs with these 8, 9, 10 guys, with 8, 9, 10 guys who deserve to be in. And so it's a tough, listen, nobody ever said the Hall was easy. Getting to the Hall isn't easy, and trying to decide who's in the Hall isn't easy. And I'm honored to be able to be on the committee that decides it. Believe me, it's the probably the greatest thrill of my professional life to be able to do that. But it's hard, and it's but if they're going to say we want to make it harder, and I think this is the blowback from Dion and some of the other Hall of Famers from last year about how too many people were getting in. Well, tell Willie Anderson that, or tell Bengals fans that who have only seen two of their players get in. Which is absurd. I mean, that's
absurd.
That's and I don't even have time to get into that argument because to me the three buckets that you have to the three buckets that you have to nail with Willie are one, how he rates against the people we've let in recently, the tackles and the offensive linemen. He has better Pro Football Focus grades, and old school scout Mike Giddings has given him better grades than most of the Hall of Famers linemen that have been in. That's one bucket. The other bucket is that he was a pioneer of technique in his time. Mm-hmm. That he engineered this low hand, high hand, independent hands concept that he helped develop. With Paul Alexander. Lane Johnson used it in the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Okay, who's an all-pro? He's a pioneer. He's a guy who's influenced the game. That separates him. That's what we should be looking for. And just the other bucket is, is just the fact that no right tackle has been. Have not elected a modern era right tackle since 2001. And my point was, and I've made this point, is the last guy to do that was Jackie Slater. Well, we may be talking about Jackie Slater's son as a potential Hall of Fame candidate in the next year or two. Well, that's too long. That's too long. So I think everybody knows Willie's. I think everybody knows. It's been written. You've done a great job talking about Willie's case. The Talk of Fame with Clark Judge has done a great job talking about his case. And so I don't think I'm saying anything out of school that hasn't been said publicly. But I mean, if they don't want, if they want to limit people getting in there, that's tough for a place that's already had to get into.
And the fact that he's made it to this level this many years in a row, and he's kind of gone one notch higher. It feels like almost every single year they've gotten that much. It feels like that ends with him getting in, but you end up fighting the first ballot game now from this point out. Like, you may be in line, but as the line in front of you fills up with the Drew Breeses of the world and these first ballot guys that are going to keep coming down the line, it's going to be, it gets harder. And obviously that's not even speaking about the kind of tragic nature of what's happened with Kenny Anderson and the senior committee being that much harder to get into. That feels devastating with the new voting setup for the seniors, with that not being a rubber stamp for some of the older players that have had this long line to get in. So all of it's troubling, but hopefully, the right thing happens and everybody sees it. The case is known. Like, the case is known. I think everybody sees it. It's just a matter of getting through, the mess of the numbers. And so we'll see. We'll see where it ends.
Next year. I mean, I look at next year, what we're looking at: Drew Brees and Larry Fitzgerald.
Yeah. So there's two.
There's two. So are we? So is it one? So is it 12 spots? I mean, so is it 12 guys for one spot?
And you're fighting Eli Manning in his second year. With two Super Bowls as a quarterback. Did Drew Brees go over top? Like, it's just
Pouncey's
and Geno
up now.
Atkins.
Pouncey.
I'm not saying Geno's going to get there, but hey, first year for Geno, who is an all-decade, two-time All-Pro.
Geno's a Hall of Famer. Geno's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, he's by all criteria, he will be a Hall of Famer.
Whitworth's a Hall of Famer. He's coming in 2 years. Yeah. Are you going to take a left tackle? Is he going to get in before Willie, the best right tackle of his time?
How about this? You know what would make it okay, Butch? Save it up and put Willie and Witt in together. They would love it.
Good. That'd be great.
And let's do it. Put the two guys in together. They're kind of kind of linked forever. I think that would be one of the coolest things that could ever happen, and that would mean you'd get to go cover the Hall of Fame game that year for sure.
Yeah, that would be genius. We'd have to wait till 2027, but that's okay.
Hey, that's okay as long as it happens. As long as it happens, right? There's no. I watch. You watch the Shannon and Sterling Sharp knock video. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't
Very
see it,
cool.
but I heard about it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like you just love it for somebody who where they've had obviously years, decades of doubt that they would ever get in. And so when it finally happens, knowing how hard it is, like we just talked through, it just means so much no matter when you get in. This whole idea of, oh, you got to get in this time, this guy's got to get in before. No, like it means so much no matter how you get in, because it's so hard to get in, no matter as a senior, no matter in your 7th year as a finalist, no matter in a first ballot. You see what it means to all of these guys, because especially the guys that have been trying for so long and had the doubt whether it would ever happen. So very cool. We obviously, everybody hopes it happens for Willie, because he is more than deserving, and kudos to you, Butch, for doing a great job keeping his case out there, being relentless, being, getting after it every year, finding new stuff, keeping to push it. And because that's how you keep going up a notch every year and end up there. And hopefully the case, ends up with him in. So Butch,
appreciate it, Paulie. I've been
good to have you back here in the city.
I appreciate it.
And stay stationed here for a while. And I guess next time I see you, we'll probably be in Indianapolis. Combine time is right around the corner. Here we go.
I look forward to seeing you in the. I guess we'll be in the obligatory Weston Lobby interviews, right?
Weston Lobby or Low Millers, one of the two places. I'm not sure where I'll see you first.
That's we'll have to replace that pregame media party.
Yeah, absolutely. We owe it. All right, Butch. Appreciate it, man. Have a good one.
Thanks very much, Paulie. We'll see you in Indy.
Yep.